Since we're here at the Bush Center, I actually have to ask you about this. Let's start there, because LEED certified, platinum certified,
sure.
all natural Texas
That's
plantings. This is something to see. Why was that important for you to do?
Well, I've always been interested in the environment. My mother was a Midland naturalist, a midnat in Midland, Texas. She became interested in bird watching when I got my Girl Scout bird badge. So I knew I wanted this to look like Texas looked, the way Dallas would have looked when it was first settled, with prairie and native plants. And I wanted the building to be LEED certified, and it's the highest, platinum certification, which is difficult and costs more money.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it saves us money. We've hardly ever had to use, we've never in fact used city water to irrigate this. It doesn't require very much irrigating, but also we have a rain collection system. All the runoff, even from the parking lot across the street, is pumped into a swale and seeps through a limestone wall to filter it, and then goes to a huge underground cistern.
It's beautiful, and it's impressive, and it's lovely in its design. I actually think when I see this, that this looks better than any manicured lawn I've seen in Texas. This is beautiful.
Well, thank you. I think it does look really beautiful. It's wild, it's Texas as Texas really is. And it's quite a contrast between the SMU campus that is landscaped in the really traditional way with probably St. Augustine or Bermuda or some sort of non-native grass. Right. This grass is called Habiturf. You can actually buy the seed for it from Douglas King growers here in Texas. We developed it with the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, and it's a mixture of 5 Texas native grasses: buffalo, poverty drop seed, a couple of grandmas, and a curly mesquite. And so it makes a good mat grass that you can walk on.
Nice and thick and tight and comfortable.
And it doesn't need to be watered often at all or mowed very often.
Is that something you want to see more of for areas like Texas?
Yes. In fact, I founded Texan by Nature with some of those same friends that I hike with, that I grew up with in West Texas, and some women who grew up on South Texas ranches, to encourage people to use native plants, to let Texas be Texas, and to let it be wild like Texas is. It's so much better for the soil and for the economy and for everything to use native plants. And because Texas is where it is, we're on the flyway from Chiapas in Mexico of the monarch butterfly.
One of the things you've done with your daughter was a beautiful book, and I actually have it. It's a children's book, but I love this because you've decided to somehow talk to families about getting kids outside and away from all the devices. Tell me why that was an important child story to tell.
Yeah, well, we wrote it really because this is the centennial of our national parks, and the national parks have been so important to us. We've hiked in them. Henry asked Jenna DeMarier on top of Acadia, a Cadillac Mountain in Acadia National Park.
I didn't know that.
And so we've been interested forever in our national parks and wanted to use this time. But also there's research that shows that this generation of young people are outside less than any generation in the history of man. And it's so important to get those kids away from screens and to be outside. It's good for your health. It's good for your mental health. Texan by Nature, our organization, just hosted a conference at Houston Methodist Hospital on the benefits of nature for good health and for mental health.
You and I grew up in a time where basically they just pushed you outside.
Yeah, your mother just said go outside and play after school.
You kind of had to ask to come back inside.
That's right. Then they called you in for dinner.
In my case, it was a whistle. My mom would stand on the porch and whistle, and we would come running. Do you truly think that if families start reading a book like this to their kids, that this resonates and we can make a shift?
I hope so. I hope it will. I mean, that's one thing. But it's just important also for mothers and dads to put their own devices down. So your kids think you're not interested in them if all you do is look at a screen. So it's really important to put your devices down yourself and plan things that are outside. Go out in your own backyard for a picnic. Or like George used to do with Barbara and Jenna when they were little, in the front yard at Walker's Point in Maine, President Bush, Gampy as we called him, George H.W. Bush would put up a tent and they'd camp. They'd get to sleep outside when they were 5 or 6. George actually thought it was miserable, but he did it. He was a good sport.
Now, you've created something called seed balls that you can actually
Yeah.
build and toss into places that will repopulate native species. Would you mind
Sure,
showing
let's
me
go
how
make them.
quick
And this is a
easy?
really fun thing that Boy Scout troops and Girl Scout troops and Sunday school classes and families can do together. They can put these native seed balls together, and because they're in this little clay ball, they're less likely to be eaten by birds or other things before they germinate.
Brilliant. Let's just go
Great.
see. Up next, let's roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty with the former First Lady of the U.S., all in the name of conservation, of course.
This is the really fun part, and this is the fun part for kids. And that's just to start mixing it all together. I think this is going to be a particularly large clay ball.